Yeah, so we've been talking about death, keeping things cheery. meeting up in London town on a sunny Wednesday afternoon to talk about mortality.
The thing that first brought it home for me was reading the Robert Greene book, Laws of Human Nature. He said, look around you wherever you are. It was the chapter on mortality. Look around you wherever you are. And I remember being in the London Underground, the Tube. It was a kind of a damp, rainy night outside, so I had this kind of steam in the carriage, uncomfortably full, and I was just a bit pissed off. But I remember listening to that, going, he said on the Audible book, or the reader said, Robert Greene's words, look around you now and realise in 90 years, every single person you see, including yourself, will be ash and dust.
Yeah.
So I was quite pissed off, and I heard that, and I looked around the packed carriage, and I suddenly had this massive compassion for humanity, really, just realising we're all fucked.
Yeah.
And we're all just bluffing it. Whether you're Bezos in your ivory tower, or you're the tramp on the street, or you're getting your heroin fixed, we're all just bluffing it and trying to make the best of it. And we're all in different stages of where that's at. We're all playing different games because we all want different things. But I think this idea for me of kind of, I think psychedelics have helped me kind of confront death a bit. But I think it's a very, very scary thing that I've often run away from. And it's not like it hasn't been in my face, because family members have died.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, friends of mine have died.
Yeah.
Some suicide, some natural, whatever they did. And that brings it home at that time for a period of time, and you live like this suddenly.
Yeah.
But then naturally, I don't know why, it's the human condition. Just forget about it. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, don't worry about
Yeah.
that.
But it's
not
like
a thing.
It's like you were saying though, the Ernst Becker thing about
Denial of death.
The denial of death, and if you really confronted it head on, you'd be screaming in the corner, because we can't operate like that. It must be like an innate instinct just to brush over it, or just to push to one side.
I think we're the only creatures that are actually consciously aware of the fact.
I think that's true. I think that's true, and that's a reason. There's this whole thing about. Have you ever heard of antinatalism? It's this idea that bringing a child into the world is immoral, because you're bringing a child into the world that is inevitably going to suffer in some shape or form. You're bringing a being, and you're giving them consciousness, which is a pretty weighty thing to have to deal with. So they say having kids is immoral because you shouldn't do that to somebody else, to another human being without their consent. It's an interesting idea. I'm not saying I totally agree with it, but I mean the reality is we've got this incredibly onerous thing to carry around with us, haven't we? Because we all know that we're dead men walking, basically. It seems like some of us manage to forget about it and push it away more than others.
I mean, I do often forget about it, and then by forgetting about it, you prioritise trivial bollocks.
Yeah.
I remember when we walked. We was in COVID. We went off to Russia, and we went up to Yekaterinburg, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we went through this mafia graveyard.
Yes.
And we actually
yes.
recorded an amazing fucking video. It was like moonlight, or the sun was coming
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
All this eerie kind of tombs everywhere, and it was awesome. We then inevitably lost the video, but we were talking a bit about the visceral realisation we're going to die, and
that was a really spooky place, wasn't it? It was really weird with the headstones and pictures of the gangsters on it. And
I mean, I think we're both big on this idea of energy, and you get a vibe, and there's something about being in a place of death where there's a very heavy vibe.
Yeah.
And it might just be a placebo effect, on our heads, but there is a certain vibration just down, right?
Yeah.
Everything vibrates, and dead bodies don't vibrate particularly fast. Cold bodies. It's a very, very hard thing to comprehend, and it's got obviously nothing to do with dating in a direct sense, but it does have it does have relevancy in the sense that we need to, in my opinion, do more of the kind of stoic idea that Ryan Holiday promotes and a couple of other guys do, which is this idea of memento mori, of really connecting in a positive way with the fact you're not around forever. You're in this meat suit that every day decays slightly more, and your time has already been eaten by death.
Yeah.
I've lived 37 years, but the way the Stoics framed it is death has claimed 37 years. So I have a certain number of heartbeats and breaths left.
That's
very worrying. It's a time glass, right? The hourglass. Part of the reason I've got these tattoos of skulls is to remind myself in some way that most of the stuff that I prioritise in my head as important is not.
Yeah.
And just try and map out a bucket list of stuff you want to do with time frames, sexual bucket list and normal bucket list, and relentlessly go and do them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we started, I think, talking about this because I was talking about a friend of mine who's in hospital at the moment, who's dying, or somebody I've known for a long
that's
time.
actually what brought the conversation up.
Yes, and it's happened a couple of times actually with a family member earlier in the year, but also somebody else that I knew a couple of years ago who died during COVID, and it like you said, those moments, it does really bring it home to you, doesn't it? And then for a bit you're like, oh fuck, that's going to happen to me as well. But then we very quickly just push it to one side. I think it's just because we wouldn't be able to operate if we didn't, you know.
So
but then at the same time,
we want to be slightly aware of it, don't we?
But then at the same time, otherwise you become this zombie who's sort of walking around, or like, you know,
as I've done for vast periods of my life, I've been
yeah.
completely consciously unaware of the fact I'm mortal.
Yeah.
And wasting my time on meaningless shit with people I didn't really care about, doing jobs I didn't give a fuck about.
Yeah.
Just because I wasn't really pushing myself, because I thought there's no urgency. But the reality is we all have a terminal illness called life.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So-
this stoic way of looking at it that I find most powerful is, this idea that death has claimed this amount of time.
That's a really interesting.
And every
way
day
of
you
looking
wake
at
up, it's another chance. You respawn one more time. But in the average lifespan, you have 28,000 moves.
it. Right.
28,000 days, and that's it. That's the average lifespan. The way we've lived our lives, especially in the last chunk of time, I'd say, I don't know, I think we'll be lucky to get 28,000 moves on the board of life. I mean, it's about, as far as I'm concerned, once you reach 70, it's a write-off anyway. So the good years for most of you watching this, if you're men between the age of 18 to 50, it's now. I mean, and this is why there's a client, you know, that you've been working with that is an epitome of a lot of guys, but I think does the average person think about this? Someone like that, good guy, but fuck me, he's got a lot to change. Does he really recognise the fact he doesn't have forever to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I'm not going to do that training, I'm going to do that meditation retreat. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Do you really understand that?
We've
One day
only
you're just not going to exist.
Yeah.
You've only got a certain period of time. Fuck giving a shit what people think. I think the people always ask me, how do I give, James, you don't seem to care what people think. How do I have a more zero, how do I, the client or the prospect, have a more zero fucks approach, ZFG approach to life? Reconnect a couple of minutes of the day, every day in the morning in the mirror, reminding yourself you're going to die.
Yeah.
And then you stop really giving a fuck what other people think, right? But you also, when you realise that you're going to die and you actually have that externalised compassion to the fact that everyone else here is mortal and they're all going to die, suddenly life isn't so scary, other people aren't so scary. Because we're all just bits of flesh walking around waiting to die.
Do you feel more compassion for people than over the years? I mean, do you feel more empathy towards people?
Yeah, massively. Because I realise we're all fucked and we're the hardest gangster, the most frail woman.
We're all battling the same thing.
We're all battling the same thing, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And there's no point pretending it's not. It's horrible. And what helped me a lot is just, again, connecting with it a little bit each day, because then you kind of desensitize in a kind of way, like, okay, if it does happen, I'm less scared. And also psychedelics make you, I don't know, for whatever reason, doing things like Toad, they make you confront this idea of death. Because you get an ego death when you smoke the Toad.
Yes.
You get complete ego death, you leave your body, you're floating around the universe, then you reconnect and you come back to life and you're like, fuck, is that what it's going to be like? It doesn't seem so scary, but fuck, you're completely out of body.
Well, I just made a contentious point, which I think you disagreed with, which was I basically said, it's not scary. But what I meant was, when you think about it, I suppose intellectually, when you think about death, if you think, and I know we don't know if this is true or not, but if you believe that there's no afterlife, there's nothing else, and it's just unconsciousness, then in a way, if you can get to that bit fairly painlessly, then you just cease to exist, which is a terrifying thought in concept, but in experiencing it, if you don't have any consciousness, you're just not going to know. So I think that's the sense that I meant it. But of course, the reality, the harsh reality is, when you feel like you're coming close to death in some way, like maybe you've done too many substances and you're just sort of like paranoid and you're worried about it, then it becomes very scary. So I think on a visceral animal level, we just naturally find it very scary. And the other thing is we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen afterwards anyway. So
well, Mark Twain made the comment, didn't he? He goes, "I've been dead for billions of years before I was born, so I'm not too fussed about afterwards," and it's kind of right.
Yeah.
I guess what brings up questions as well for me is, what actually are we? Because when you see a body, something has left that body, right? We're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we're an entity that sits behind it in this facade of a skin, flesh. Yeah. What actually are we? What is this spiritual thing inside it? What are we?
I suppose they would call it the soul, wouldn't they? Religious people would have called it the soul.
Because when they say dead body, it's just that something is left, but the body's still there. It's not breathing. Something leaves the house, right? So
it's that consciousness and the I don't know really. It's the amalgamation of everything, isn't it? It's the personality. It's how it interacts and.
I think that what really helped me as well was a video about whether it's a thought experiment. And it's a great video, we can post it underneath. A guy called Ganso philosopher, really bizarre Indian geeky guy, but he just really mapped out the thought experiment. Imagine you've got 365 days a year left to live.
Yeah.
And every day you wake up and you tick off a day, and you relentlessly, the way he talks it through is like, fuck, you really prioritise what you want to do. Because I think most people, because we disconnect with death, we live lives of these kind of slow, quiet lives of what are we doing, monotonous days roll into the next. You're sitting there, you know, maybe week after week, watching some shitty programs you don't give a fuck about as mindless mind boredom to take away from the present moment. But if someone told you, right, you've got 265 days left to live, you'd be shit scared. You'd be like, right, fuck this, and just go and do all the stuff that we probably wanted to. I mean, I'm guilty of this. So many things in my life I've wanted to do. I've done a lot of things, but so many things I've wanted to do. I'm always like, oh, I'll get to it another time.
Yeah.
Someone new, and I think this is why actually it's quite. When you speak to some really interesting interviews on YouTube where you've got stage 4 cancer patients who are prepared for death, and then they've miraculously recovered. But what's fascinating is because they're preparing for death, they start living life at 100 miles an hour, doing all the stuff they want to do, and then they get the diagnosis of clearness, and then they continue to live at that rate because they've been given a second chance. And Dostoevsky talks about this, and Robert Greene quotes Dostoevsky in Laws of Human Nature, where he's been taken to the square, and I think it's St. Petersburg, and they all load the guns, there's a firing squad, him and some other political prisoners, and they're wearing blindfolds, they hear the guns cocking, and the last minute they hear this horse galloping in, and the screeching of the car, and then someone gets out with some trumpets and someone reads out a scroll being like they've been pardoned. But on the cusp of death.
Yeah. It's incredible, that story, isn't it?
It is, and even it sends up your spine just by thinking, right. I mean, I've had a couple of instances as well where, again, for a few weeks afterwards, I live like 100 miles an hour because I'm like, that's
but it's keeping it present, isn't it? So if we, I don't want to commercialise this, but just sort of wrapping it broadly into the fact that we're trying to sell a course to the edge, I suppose there is a sort of like underlying meaning to all of this, isn't there? Because in a way, I guess what we could say is, in the edge we talk about, and again, I don't want this to be a big sales pitch because it kind of spoils the flow, but we talk about leaning into your masculinity and becoming the person that you were always meant to be.
Well, David Dana, in Way of the Spirit Man, would say, actually the way a man should live his life, and I agree with this, is leaning into the masculine edge, which is slightly outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
There's a challenge level to be assessed, and you hit that flow state, and I think that's absolutely the way it should be lived.
So what we could say is that if you had this real awareness of death, maybe you would act more like that. Maybe we're trying to encourage you to act in a way that you would if you had a gun to your head, or if you knew that, you know, you only had 2 years left to live, or whatever it is. So maybe that's the sort of connection, because it's quite good, because we come and do these videos and we're sort of talking around stuff that's just in our heads anyway, but it is all sort of interconnected, isn't it?
100%. Most of my wasted life, if I look back on it and say it's been wasted, has been not understanding that I don't have forever.
Yeah.
Like living a life where you just kind of roll through in a bit of a cloud of haze, not really fully conscious, a bit of a zombie. And you're like, the good times will roll on, you know, I'll get to that next time, and all this bollocks.
But do you include, using substances and stuff in that sense of waste of time, or do you think actually that's not a bad thing? Because actually, at least you're living on a sort of an edge, then, aren't you? If you're, because I mean, people would say, oh, I wasted all these years drinking, or I wasted all these years doing drugs and stuff. But actually, in a way, if you look at it in the more like the who is it that talks about this? If you look at it in the more like the Camus kind of way of like just you might as well be hedonistic. Maybe that's time better spent than working a crappy office job.
I think do whatever life's just an experiment. Do whatever makes you happy, and then but know when to leave. Everything's a game. Know when to leave certain games. And for example, for me now with alcohol, I drank heavily for years. I haven't drunk recently, and I don't really plan to go back to it. I might have the odd drink on a date, but it's lost its appeal for me because I'm bored of feeling shit. Yeah. And I'm like, that served its time. And don't get me wrong, I had some great times, but now I want to do some other stuff, right?
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a false paradise, isn't it? The use of substances and alcohol and things, because it gives you a very quick dopamine rush or dopamine hit, but then you feel fucking awful afterwards. And so anybody who genuinely is living that life consistently and saying that they're really enjoying themselves, I don't really think it's true, because you've got to go through the lows, haven't you?
I think
unfortunately. So but then it gets into the whole, that book Dopamine Nation or whatever it's called, where she talks about the basically leaning into the difficult stuff, leaning into the boring stuff, or the Wim Hof, getting into a freezing bucket of water every morning.
You get this low-grade fulfillment from that, don't you? It's not an instant dopamine rush, but you get a low-grade.
Or going to the gym is sort of like,
you feel awesome. You feel awesome.
Going to the gym actually does give you an endorphin rush. So
you feel amazing when you're in the gym. When you're moving, you're exercising. You can't. There's some things that if I don't do, I just feel awesome.
Some things are slower burn, right? So this morning I did some journaling. Or you could just say writing, I suppose. But I did some journaling.
It sounds more impactful.
Yeah. The thing about journaling is that it actually fucking works to make you feel better about stuff. So I wrote down, I just did the old morning pages routine of writing 3 pages, longhand, of just stuff that's currently going on. And it doesn't give you, it's not like, oh, I'm going to do a line of coke and I'm going to feel fucking great in 25 seconds. It's a slow, you start and you think, oh, I can't really be asked doing this, is there any point to this?
Right.
And you're sort of self-conscious or whatever. It's a slower burn thing. But by the end of the time when I finished the exercise, I was feeling a lot better.
Yeah.
So that's an example of something. It's not like this massive, like, oh yeah, I'm going to get high on journaling, but it works.
And a version of that I do is at the beginning of the day, I'll almost pep talk to myself out loud, but in the mirror. There's something about when you're facing yourself and you're getting out all the stuff in your head that you're ruminating on, but you're saying it out loud, almost having a conversation with yourself in the mirror, you feel amazing.
Yeah.
And you can almost motivate yourself. So I'll do that for 3 or 4 minutes at the beginning of every day. And it will take me out of my head, feeling like ruminating in my head, to, okay, all the problems are kind of out loud now.
Yeah.
And you feel better, and it's... Life is a fascinating thing. No one knows what the fuck's going on. We have to find... The Viktor Frankl book was great. But the title is symbolic of what we're all going through, is man's search for meaning. What is life for the person? What can you find meaning in?
So yeah, exactly. And it's a big.
And I think for most men, even if you don't want to stay being a player, you have to fuck a load of women. Because let's be honest, the 2 most intoxicating drugs for men is power and women. Yeah, power and women. So why not chase those and experience some of those?
Yeah. I think it's something you definitely need
life is all about feelings.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something you need to tick off. You need to scratch the itch sufficiently. And if you haven't done that, you're always going to feel unfulfilled.
The problem is it never ends, is it though? Because the more women you bang, the more you want to bang.
True.
It never ends.
True, although it's like I said to you. I mean, I think I've slowed down over the past few years, and that's been then we're doing some hormone optimization stuff, and that's sort of gone up and down a little bit. But I think there's been a general sort of lull, which I think is not a bad thing. I've always thought that's actually quite a good thing, because the monkey's not on my back in quite the same way as it was when I was in my 20s.
I thought I got past it, but now I'm just hornier than ever, and I just want to.
Well,
do is bang.
Yeah, I mean, it's up and down. But I think. But yeah, you're right. I mean, in general, you're right. It doesn't really go away, and you're always gonna have that thing there, that niggling in the back of your head. I think. You're gonna have that urge, and so I guess that's why it's important to learn the skill sets that we teach to sort of be able to meet new people. But I mean, the thing is, I suppose one of the problems with a lot of these dudes that we meet who come from training and come onto a program like The Edge is that they're not really living authentically, to put it pretentiously. They're not actually living as they were intended to. They're not really honest with themselves or with the people that they meet about what they want and their desires as a man. It's just down to something as simple as pretending to be her friend when actually you want to sleep with them. That kind of thing. It's like they're just not being authentic versions of themselves.
And it's a double loss then, isn't it? Because not only are they not getting what they want, they're also lying to others to protect other people's feelings, to disguise what they want.
Yeah.
So it's a double, it's double inauthentic.
So maybe the fear of putting the fear of death into them, but I mean maybe it's as simple as the Fight Club thing when he's like, oh, by next year you've got to be a veterinary nurse, otherwise I'm going to kill you. It's almost
Raymond.
It's almost as simple as that, isn't it? It's like, look, if you had a gun to your head, could you get a date tonight? Yeah, probably. Could you get some phone numbers? Yeah, probably. The reason a lot of these guys just aren't doing it is because they don't have that sense of urgency, and they think, oh, I can just wait for another day. I'll sort it out next month, or I'll meet somebody eventually, and and it just gets left and left and left. But the problem is that people then get caught in the cracks. Like there are people that we know who've literally had a non-existent romantic sex life for fucking years because they're just sitting there with their proverbial dick in their hands, and sort of thinking, oh, it'll sort itself out sometime. It just won't,
100%. There's a lot of themes in that. It's quite a deep topic, but it's probably the most important topic you can possibly think about. The most important thing, there's a great quote, isn't there, by a guy who's now obviously dead. But enlightenment is realising not to sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
Point number one. Point number two, it's all small stuff. It is, apart from death, where that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Everything else beneath that's not that big a deal. And I think that stir concept of the more fatty, right? Love of fate, love the lot, the highs, the lows, the blows, whatever it is, just accept it for what it is, surrender to that present thing, and try and enjoy that thing, whatever you're doing, 10% more, have more fun with it. There's no brownie points for going through life really serious and like depressed, and if that's the case, you have to change stuff. And a lot of it comes back down to men not putting it on the line, actually directly chasing what they want, which is women.
Yeah.
Because they're doing all this stuff indirectly, get the pay rise, move up the corporate percent, social hierarchy, dominance ladder, get the sports car. It's all to try and get laid.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It's not because do men really like buy a sports car because they like the car? Maybe some car enthusiasts, yes. I'd say most people use it as a try and use it as a pussy magnet, right? Or
Yeah.
like the car I have. Whereas £100,000 spent with us on coaching would be a way better investment for their time.
Absolutely would. So email address below, troy@troyfrancis.com, info@jamestusk.com if you want to join the edge. But yeah, it's kind of funny because on the one hand we're making quite a profound, sincere video where we're really talking about our actual feelings about this stuff, and on the other hand we're trying to yoke it to trying to sell some places on a course. But that's the way of the world, I guess. But they are connected. They are strangely connected, aren't they? All of the weird philosophical ramblings that we do, and we've done when we've made videos over the last few years, it is actually all very connected with the dating stuff, isn't it? In an odd way.
Of course, it's all connected to dating, and it's all stuff that it's really hard because you get into this stuff and you approach loads and you go on loads of dates, get laid, and that kind of, it doesn't lose its shine, but you kind of get a bit of a lethargy to being bothered to do it.
Yeah.
And then you want to speed up the process more and more and more, but then you kind of miss elements of actually the beauty of the seduction and just being just being with someone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just an endless mind game, and there's no right or wrong, but I think most guys, what you need to do, if you're watching this, is throw yourself into the fire and just go and do some approaching and realise there are women out there who are going to like you. But cold approach day game is a multi-stack habit. It's a bit like going to the gym. You go to the gym, you feel good, you look good, you're in a flow state. You've got all these benefits from going to the gym. You also have all these benefits from being social and just bantering with people.
Yeah.
Conversing with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And approaching women when you see them.
Apart from anything else, actually feeling better.
Using it as a therapy.
Like Tom Torero used to say.
It's true, because when you're in your own head, you're ruminating about how all this stuff in your mind. Whenever I've just planned in and gone through periods of life where every day, whichever city I'm in, I just go for a walk outside, and then on that walk, if I see a couple of cute girls, I go and talk to them. Even if nothing happens, nothing comes of it, I feel 1,000 times better than I did. Just the act of walking, and then being social. It's so easy to get out of your own head. I think a lot of the problems we have are just being trapped in our own head, and you can't think your way out of anxiety.
Yeah.
You can't think your way out of your head. You have to go and take some action.
Yeah.
Get away from your brain and put yourself into some other activity.
Yeah.
But it's again, remembering this stuff. It's so easy to forget, isn't it?
And
you
engaging,
sit there stewing on stuff.
Engaging with other people is probably the best way to get out of your own head.
You can't not be present.
I mean, to take it a stage further, which is not really what we're doing in game, but I mean, is to help other people. If you, and I mean, you probably notice this, but sometimes if you get on a call with somebody, even if you don't particularly want to get on the call, and they're talking about some problem that they've got, some dating problem, and you're trying to help them with that, it takes you out of your own shit for a while, and that's, I think, is
No, it's so important.
It's really important. It's valuable for them, but it's also valuable for you because you get something from it. Obviously, when we're trying to date, we're not trying to help in the same way, but it serves a similar sort of purpose. If you can sort of just get into an interaction with a woman, have some good positive vibe between you, it just fucking lifts you up, and it should lift her up as well.
100%.
It should be a win-win. I mean, this is what Torero used to say. Maybe it seems a bit naive now. You know the whole thing of like, leave her better than you found her, and all that stuff, and then it kind of all got, but one gender's sexual strategy has to win, and the other's it's a zero-sum game. But in a way, it'd be nice if it should be win-win most of the time. I think either you have a positive interaction, and even if she's not interested, she goes away feeling happy, or something comes of it.
And you've broken yourself out of this kind of self-imposed, socially shackled state.
Yeah.
Because even if you approach 3 women and get blown out, it stings for like one, maybe a minute. But you feel better because you took the action. You ran into fear. And if we can gamify running into anxiety, into tension, into fear, and learning to be comfortable with that, you can't not live a good life. Because then you're either sitting in good emotion, like happiness and fulfillment, and going to the gym, for example, feeling pumped up, or you're gamifying the process of the fear and anxiety, and then that takes that whole, this idea of it being a negative emotion, or negative emotions away, right? So I mean, it's endlessly fascinating, this stuff, because game and approaching women is a microcosm of everyday life. I think getting into this stuff and facing it head on allows you to see beyond the parapet and to think, right, what do I truly want for my life? And obviously then that produces more questions and answers. But yeah, on a visceral level, relating all back to the fact that one day you're not going to exist.
Yeah.
And most people, I do believe most people, don't really have this conversation with most people, but I'd be surprised if most people actually connect with the fact they are going to die on a very visceral level. I'm not sure they do until they realise they're dying.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they kind of connect with death. But I think there's more sensible ways, in a non-morbid way, try and just spend a couple of minutes each day remembering you're not going to be here forever.
So when you've done that as a consistent practice, have you actually found it somewhat helpful? Can you keep it front of mind?
Yes, for that day, and then all you've got to do, a bit like the AA thing, is win one day.
It's just the next day.
You forget about it completely. You wake up, this problem, this, and then you watch maybe one of these Run Holiday videos. He's got some very good videos on mental Mori, and you kind of like, you almost give yourself a pep talk in the mirror, brain, like, okay, look, you're mortal. You're not going to live forever. How would you live your day if this was the last day out? How would you live it socially? How would you live it in terms of pushing your comfort zone? And when I've actually remembered to do that, I go out and I live an amazing day.
Yeah.
Because I go out and smash the gym, I get on some calls, I'm in a random city, I go and explore a new point, I'm walking around and being social. I feel amazing. And the days I don't do that, I sit there stewing on meaningless future prediction problems that never occur, or worrying about shit that happened in the past that I cannot change.
Yeah.
What a waste of time.
Yeah.
Be present and try and just enjoy whatever you're doing as much as you can. And using that as a mindfulness technique, so I've got a reminder on my phone, it'll pop up when I open WhatsApp, which is, all right, be present, and whatever you're doing right now, I'll pose it as a question, how could I enjoy this 10% more?
Yeah.
How could I make this 10% more fun? And posing it as a question to yourself means you find answers. So you might gamify, I might put a time limit on this work I'm doing. I might be like, right, I'm going to go for a walk and I've got to approach 3 women in half an hour. And then you're in the zone, you're gamifying it, you're present, you're away from the smartphone. And that's all we have is millions of present moments. And then that's it.
Yeah.
But how much of our life do we spend worrying about the future which never occurs, or worrying about the past that we can't change? And how much does that take away the quality of our life from the present moment? So much. I've spent most of my entire life not in the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Which is crazy.
Me too. And
how
actually,
much do you sit there at your desk ruminating on all this stuff that never happens?
Yeah.
Or thinking about all this shit that people have done to you that doesn't even exist. It's just a fragment of a memory in your head. Well, it's insane.
I spent probably the last 2 or 3 years like living in the past, really living on old memories, and like, oh, what about this, what about that, and blah blah blah. And
is that what you call her?
And is that a good use of time?
No,
probably not.
No, it's right here, right now, right?
Yeah.
It's like being in the moment, having a conversation where you're connected with the present. That's all there is.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
why I love that book, Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now.
Yes.
But if you want the very streamlined version, practicing the Power of Now it's only 2 hours long. It's a very practical way of just remembering to actually come back to the present. Always coming back to the present moment. And just by asking yourself, am I present? That automatically makes you present.
It's quite difficult though, isn't it? If you like to ruminate, because I think you do as well. I think we like to ruminate.
I'm not sure I like to ruminate. I think that's just the disease that I caught myself in, because that's been we're just subconscious behaviour patterns, right? 90% is subconscious. I think that's, no one told me any different. So then I'm just naturally ruminate, and that for doing that for, since I was consciously awake, from the age of 5, that's all I've done. So no one told me, oh, you're not actually your thoughts. Why are you in your head your whole time?
Yeah, true. It's a comfort blanket, isn't it? It's a comfort zone.
A discomfort zone.
Well,
it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't, but I mean, I have found that ruminating and self-pity, sometimes people talk about this in AA meetings actually, they'll say self-pity was my first drug. And it kind of does, because you can walk around this cloud of self-pity.
People are addicted to the victim mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can all fall prey to that. I mean, it's not as good a drug as cocaine, but it serves its purpose. So yeah, but ultimately it's not getting you anywhere. It's not productive. And like you say, do you think memories are real? I mean, memories are just what does it matter?
Because also your brain lies to you and you change the memory. Your brain, they've done a load of research on this, and consistently your brain will completely change the memory. So the original memory It's not like a photo. It's a warped memory, especially if you're under the influence of some stuff, attached to emotion, and then that changes over time anyway.
Yeah.
So you're looking back and you don't even know what it was.
Yeah,
it's nothing.
yeah.
And it's just in your own head because no one else is seeing it the same as you.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's really scary to realise that you're completely alone in this universe in a way, that because your perception of reality is no one else's, and it's a singular point of view on a singular person game, and when you die, that dies. And so we've not even got any reassurance that what we're seeing is what everyone else is seeing. And that in itself is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We're all hermetically sealed. We're all sealed off.
And I find that concept, when I realised that, I found that horrendously, upsetting as well. Because all these memories you think you have with other people, how do you even know they saw it that way?
Well,
it's all nonsense.
Indeed. Well, on that cheery note, join us in Colombia.
Yeah, existential meltdown, ahoy.
Yeah, just drop us an email, info@jamestusk.com or troy@realtroyfrancis.com if you'd like to join us on the Edge programme, or if you'd like to join us in Colombia, Bogota for the boot camp, which is the 17th of October as well.
Yeah, and if any of that chat has scared you somewhat, good, because you need to change what you're doing. You can't think your way to a new reality. You need to physically do something different to change what's going on.
But fundamentally, I suppose what we're saying is people are sleepwalking, and
Yes.
we've been guilty of it.
Most of my life I've sleepwalked.
We sleepwalk around, and we have bad habits. We're not expressing ourselves authentically. You're not being the man that you were meant to be. You're just going around being polite and doing the things that you think society want you to do.
It's a bullshit way to live, isn't it? Because I've been there, I've done that, I've done the nice guy to people please intensity routine. And you know what? You feel deep inside, you just feel fucking unhappy.
Yeah.
Because you're not living life as you want to live it. And you're prioritising other people's needs above your own, which is a terrible thing to do.
Yeah.
Why are you putting their oxygen mask on first? There's nothing Mother Teresa about that. That's called being a retard. I'm not saying be a fucking asshole to everyone, but do what you want. Put your own oxygen mask on first. The plane is going down. What do they teach the mothers to do? They put their own oxygen mask before they help other people.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy helping other people in the capacity we do, but a large part of my life I've been guilty of the fact I haven't prioritised myself and my own needs, and that's meant the quality of my life is not as good as it should have been. And then conversely, I can't actually give properly to other people if I'm not living relentlessly, authentically on my terms. I think that's how guys should. Guys are always like, oh, do I need to be a bad boy if I'm a nice guy? No, live authentically. Say what you think. Say what you think and think what you do. What's the phrase? Say what you think.
Because the
say
whole
what you feel, do what you want, and relentlessly don't put yourself first and do it.
Because the whole matrix, there's a whole matrix, to use that expression, of things that are controlling you, and it's women, yes, but also having a job. Like I was talking to my girlfriend the other day about this, and I was saying most people in corporate are unhappy. When you work in corporate, you know intuitively that everyone around you is unhappy. Nobody fucking likes it. Some people are better at pretending about it than others, but nobody fucking likes it. It's all nonsense. It's all bollocks. And why are they doing those jobs? Well, they do those jobs so they can get a mortgage to buy a nice house in Surrey, or so they can have a certain type of car, or they can wear certain types of clothes. And again, they're living up to a facade. It's all societally created, isn't it? It's all bollocks. But they're doing the things that they think are right because somebody's told them to do it. And so they've got themselves imprisoned in this situation that's ultimately not fulfilling them.
I think having the balls to do what you truly want in life, well, it takes balls.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but it's the right way. It's the only way you can live a good life is do what you want to do. And the hard thing is actually figuring out what you really want.
Well,
the way I figured that out, and I still haven't gone there, but it started with what I don't want. So I didn't want to continue living in London. Turned 30, a friend of mine died. I was like, fuck, life's short. I always wanted to travel. Fuck this, I'm leaving. And loads of people tried to stop me. There was so much internal pressure, my family, my friends. What are you doing? Don't go, blah, blah, blah. There's so much pressure to stay, and I just bust through it, and I was like, fuck this, I'm leaving. And I don't regret it, because although I haven't truly figured out what I really want in life, I'm moving closer to it. I've figured out, right, I enjoy helping people.
Yeah.
I enjoy adventure, I enjoy travel, I enjoy dating. So I'm building these things into my life bit by bit, and I've had to leave people by the wayside. You could argue that's slightly ruthless. I think it's sensible. Because the people I was mates with in London were not where I wanted to be, and they weren't doing the things I wanted to do, so I had to leave them.
Yeah.
And I still get flack for it years later, but you know what? Fuck what people think. People need to back their own perception of what they want more. You need to be more brave about being relentless and asking the universe for what you want. If you want to fucking go and bang loads of fucking hookers and don't go and do loads of cocaine, come to Pocket Stuff. Do that. If you want to get married and have some kids with a woman your parents don't approve of, fuck them. It's your reality. Do that thing. Right? I'm not saying go and rape and murder people, but relentlessly figure out what you want and go and do it, because if you don't, you're going to be lying there on your deathbed. And there's that great article from that palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware, the Australian nurse who cared for the sick and dying for like 30 years and wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets. You don't need to read that book, but one of the top 5 regrets she recorded from 30 years worth of patients, and with their final words is, "I wish I'd lived a life true to myself and not the life other people expected of me."
Yeah.
And that's is the most said of the top 5 of all.
Yeah.
Living life on other people's terms. When people, they don't give a fuck about you. They're worrying about themselves. We think that people see our reality through our eyes. They don't. They're worrying about what they're having for dinner. It's freeing when you realise that. They don't give a fuck about you. If you went on camera and started doing porn, you get people be up in arms for weeks at something exciting in their boring lives, but then they just forget about it. No one gives a fuck, right? And you said this before about content creation, which is kind of cool, which is nowadays there's so much content online. If someone slags you off, people might see the video for one day and they've forgotten about it the next day.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of freeing in a way. But I think particularly me, I've lived my life a lot of the time caring way too much what other people think.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not prioritising my needs and what I want first. And that came down to not really knowing what I wanted, to be honest. And again, that process takes time. You have to go and experiment, treat life like an experiment. That's a good frame. Go and do loads of different things. Oh, that thing makes me feel really good for long periods of time, like the gym. Okay, continue doing it. Oh, that thing makes me feel kind of shit, or I'm not that interested in painting. All right, stop doing it. But try lots of stuff. You can't think it. Try it and see how you feel, and then add it to the repertoire or remove it, you know? And sometimes we fuck up. I spent years, doing drinking. And it was a lot of fun. It had its benefit that side, but it had a lot of downside, made me feel shit, lots of money, feeling guilty, all that stuff. So now I've come to the point with booze where I'm not going to really booze much moving forward. It's just not, it served its purpose for me. And that's okay, I've let it go. But trying some new things and mapping out, right, and then slowly building the roster up that way of how you want your life to look. And if you're filling your day with stuff that makes you happy more than not happy, you're on the right track. If you're waking up every day and being a depressed mess and being like, fuck, life isn't good, you need to take a look in the mirror and decide what you need to change, because no one's coming to save your ass. That book, 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, Nathaniel Branden, one of the key things he said in that book when I was listening to the Audible book is people start living life when they have the realisation no one is coming to save them. Right? And that's taking full responsibility for your life, Jocko Willink style. It's a really hard thing to do, but there's nothing else to be done. No one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
So you list out what you want, and then you go and get it, and you seek out mentors or people that can help you get it. But you have to decide. Everyone's playing a different game. Everyone has different quests, different mission, things that important to them. No one's playing the same game as you. Don't listen to them. If the person isn't in the position you want to be in, with whatever it is you want to do, don't listen to them. Find people that are in that position, and then get the advice from them.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, let's leave this one for now and
Go kill ourselves.
see you later.